Can you get the scripture
Mm-hmm.
in Matthew? Says so the reading from Emmett Fox begins with a reading from Matthew's Gospel, chapter 5, verses 38 to 42.
Okay, 38 through 42. You have heard that it is said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. But I say to you that you should not resist evil, but whoever strikes you on your right cheek, turn to him the other also. And there's a commentary here. Turn your cheek means do not start a quarrel or a fight in response. And if anyone wishes to sue you at court and take away your shirt, let him have your robe also. Whoever compels you to carry a burden for a mile, go with him too. Whoever asks from you, give him, and whoever wishes to borrow from you, do not refuse him. Now,
Okay.
I'm not. You're
So
reading
then,
fourth. It's the third that you need to read.
that's what I'm on.
Oh, okay.
So he focuses on, but I say unto you that you shall not resist evil. Jesus is a revolutionary teacher. He turns the world upside down for those who accept his teaching. When once you have accepted the Jesus Christ message, all values change radically. The old law was that whatever man did to man, he should himself be made to suffer by way of punishment. If he put out another man's eye, his own was put out by the officers of justice, and if he killed, he was killed. The desire to get even, to get one's own back, to level things up somehow or other when we have been hurt or have suffered injustice or witnessed things of which we did not approve, will remain with us until the time when we definitely take ourselves in hand and destroy it. Revenge, said Bacon, is a kind of wild justice. Now Jesus reverses this and says that when someone injures you, you are to forgive him, no matter what the provocation may be, and no matter how many times it's repeated. You are to loose him and let him go, for thus only can you be freed yourself.
Now, he has several different days of exploring this, and I want to cover some key points. First of all, do not resist evil is interpreted as against vengeance, against repaying evil with evil, or not, thus not engaging in vengeance. And he has another day where he talks about that. But it is not a prohibition against self-defense. And as Lamsa mentions in his side note, turning the other cheek is essentially not stooping to the other person's level, if you will. Okay, so the other day I was thinking about a struggle that I had when I was younger. Before I began my healing journey, I had convinced myself, as I'll say, as a matter of survival for my situation, that the world had to be dealt with on a purely rational basis. And thus there were only binary answers. Yes, no, black, white, good, bad. And Fox's reading here is an address, if you will, to that issue. But I also encountered, by one of these God happenstances, a talk by Richard Rohr. And it reflects what has happened to my thinking as I've accomplished my own healing. That life exists on a continuum. Decisions exist on a continuum. And the same applies to our spiritual life. Speaking about binary, just as a sidebar, my foster father, David Myers, once told me, anytime you think there's only two choices to make, step back and look again, because usually there are at least five. And I've used that put that to very good use as a way of avoiding making panicked binary decisions. Now, Rohr, and I'm sort of moving to Rohr now because what he says is a challenge even to me even now. In this talk, he was talking about the contemplative life and how that helps us understand the Trinity or understand the divine in all its multiplicities, in all of its broadness. And I'm going to share some of what he had to say. First of all, when he talks about contemplative mind, he's talking about meditation, open-ended prayer, anything where you become, I'll say, a vessel willing to be filled. But it's not something rational. What he starts by saying that without the contemplative mind, without being the open-ended vessel, the rest of spiritual teaching in the Western world doesn't go to any depth. It doesn't transform, doesn't enlighten. And he says that's one of the big problems with, he says, Christian teaching. I'll say Western Christian teaching, and I'll explain why in a little bit. But he says it's never been true. It's not our job, he says, to tell people what to see. It's our job, and I'll say our job as spiritual people to, and he says, and Jesus did this beautifully, to teach people how to see. He says, every reform in Christianity began with dualistic thinking. Their argument would be that this new way of thinking was absolutely correct and the old beliefs were 100% wrong. In other words, I'm okay, you're not okay. My belief is okay, your belief is not okay. And he says our tendency, and again in the Western view, is to think that we must know something before we can love it. Whereas in the divine way, the contemplative way, and I'll say the Eastern way in many cases, is that we must love something and then we can know it. Because through love, through the openness of love, we can begin to grasp truth. And he goes on to say it's important not to try to bring ourselves to comprehend the Spirit piece by piece, but rather to allow it to reveal itself in its wholeness. And that's where there's the difference between the rational approach. Okay, now I understand this piece, and I will debate you on this piece, and you're wrong on this piece, sort of thing. By allowing truth divine to reveal itself in its wholeness, you have to allow sort of a steady gaze of acceptance towards the wholeness, toward everything. And in moving in love, in moving through using the contemplative approach, what I call the nonlinear approach, we'll find ourselves more opening up, if you will, to the whole of divinity, of the divine experience. And at the same time, we'll find it opening up to us. So, coming from the Western side, we tend to approach everything rational. What will this do for me? Will this make me money? Will this explain what is happening? I'm sure you've run into situations among deaths, I've seen it so often, attempts to explain away in a rational way so that someone will feel better. I remember I was overhearing a conversation between a kid he had built a go-kart, and the day before someone had broken into the garage while the family was away and stolen it. And I overheard, I think it was a relative say, well, they stole it because they were jealous of what you can do. Trying to explain away in a rational way. It doesn't work. It doesn't let us grasp the divine in any whole way. It's too small. And that's not how God sees things. And that's where we find ourselves caught in a notion of confusion. Because on the Western side, we're taught to think rationally, to try to give rational explanations. Divinity school, you're given rationality to work from. On the Western side. The contemplative side, I call it nonlinear, or the shamanic side of life. It enables us to approach the viewpoint of God, or at least as much as we're capable of when we're living in this three-dimensional existence. We can begin to have some sense of its completeness, of its complexity, of the gobsmacking broadness, infinityness of it all, as opposed to just, okay, I get it. There's a book, The Master and Its Emissary, by Ian McGilchrist, that Rohr mentions. The writer talks about the divided brain, the rational and the non-rational part, and explores how the Western side in its spiritual walk has always tended toward the rational. And if you understand Orthodox Christianity much, having investigated it much, or the non-dualistic part of Islam, such as the dervishes, it's different. They work from the mystical side. They're more open to the moving of the spirit in ways that we don't even try to rationalize or comprehend. And Rohr writes, the intuitive mind, the contemplative mind, the shamanic mind, whatever words you want to use, the nonlinear mind, is a sacred gift. The rational mind is only its servant. And when he said that, I found myself thinking about Einstein. Einstein was so noted for the brilliance of his rational thinking to put things together in new ways. But the story is that he'd be working on a problem, he'd been working on the problem, and he was stumped. This was a common occurrence. And when he was stumped, he'd say, I'm going for a walk and have a little think. And he'd come back and the answer was there. The little think was the nonlinear part, giving comprehension. Now, the problem with those of us trained in the Western mind is we tend to worship the servant, the rational mind, and we tend to ignore or defile or ridicule the sacred gift of the nonlinear mind. And we're all vulnerable to this. It's what we've been trained into. We're addicted, if you will, to that way of thinking. Whatever form of thinking our rational mind takes, that's what we instinctively go for. And it's so difficult to move away from that and become anchored in the nonlinear. In Matthew 19, the rich man has come to Jesus, says, "What do I need to do to follow you?" And Jesus responds, "If you want to be perfect, go sell your possessions, give to the poor, and you'll have treasure in heaven. Then come follow me." Well, as the late Sister Pepper used to say, what's the thing you hold on, the most precious thing that you have? It's your tightly held, firmly held beliefs. And he was telling the young men in metaphysical terms, let go of the rigidity of your thinking. Be open to the nonlinear. And as the Bible reports, when the young man heard this word, he went away sad, for he had great possessions. Yes, all of us tend to have firmly held beliefs. And they get in our way. They get in our way. And when we are holding on to those firmly held beliefs, I think someone came in. Oh, come on in. We enter a zero-sum game. My way or the highway. I'm right or you're right. And that's not the divine way. That's just not the divine way. In the Bible, several times, Christ would say to the apostles, let the little children come to me. Metaphorically, he was saying, let the part of you that doesn't think rationally, that is open to the nonlinear, and if you remember, I think most of you attended, some time ago we had a session where what we did was we recounted reports of children, usually before 6, and it's not uncommon, who remember where they were before in their previous life or lives, who talked about having walked with God. And then the rational part, because they don't have a rational part back then. In parent, adult, child, they're still stuck just in the child. And then as they mature into this world, if you will, they move into the rational, and they lose that connection, which we need to get back to be able to walk fully in the Spirit. I also came across a book, Girl in a Box, Seeking Enlightenment as a Tibetan Buddhist nun, a Baptist, a woman raised Baptist Christian who, I guess we'd say, decided to explore, ended up spending time with nuns, with what she calls the non-dual paradigm. And then she ended up coming back to Christianity. But she says, and I think this is a cool point, it's just like a whole different set of clothing gets put over the truth. I'm going to say that again because I think it's so important for us to remember. It's just like a whole different sort of set of clothing gets put over the truth. And then the question becomes, in a world filled with a lot of noise, how do you discern the path, the contemplative path, if you will, that will help you open up, become the vessel that can take truth that is downloaded to you without rationality? And she argues that we do know, and whatever we do is another step forward, with the implication, of course, that you're willing to let go of the rational as the primary and move toward the nonlinear. When I was in the performing arts, I was friends with a couple of women who did nonlinear theater. And early in my friendship with them, I attended a couple pieces, and it was a mind blower. I couldn't deal with it because it didn't make any sense. It wasn't designed to make rational sense. Looking back, as I became more comfortable with, shall we say, divine downloads into me, or the non-rational of existence. I attended a couple of other of their nonlinear pieces, and I got it. I couldn't give you any words about it, but I got it. And that's the sort of thing you're going to experience with the divine when you're able to, the more you're able to give up your addiction to rational thinking. Let's see. She talks about enlightenment, and she says, for all her experiences, she doesn't know what enlightenment is anymore. She thinks that the concept of going for enlightenment can be a distraction because it's something out there. Okay, so now we're striving for it, so therefore we're putting the rational mind to work. But when you're doing that, you're not being here, right here in the moment, which is the place where your enlightenment, your download of non-rational truth is going to happen. It's the being rather than the striving, if you will. And she argues that the more we can show up just being authentic, walking through this world, that puts us in service. And service manifests and helps us open up because we're not trying to do it. And Lori just said something. I had a little kid do that to me, sit in my lap and tell me she had a husband and lots of children. So that's what I want to convey today. All of us here are already more comfortable with walking a nonlinear spiritual path, or you wouldn't be here. You know how many people come in for just one session and then leave because it doesn't fit their path. And this writer says, yeah, that's okay. You know, they're perfect in their perfect journey, wherever it is. And then it's interesting how the divine puts all this information in front of me. I came across a poem by Mary Oliver, who tends to write a lot about nature. And to me, this poem, in its non-linearity, if you will, captures the entire sense of living beyond the rational, living in love, and witnessing the shadow of an ungraspable sweetness. The ungraspable sweetness of the download, the connection to all that is, to the divine, that even in our best moments, as long as we're in this three-dimensional body, we have trouble experiencing. So I'm going to close with this reading. It's titled, To Begin With, The Sweet Grass. And it starts, Will the hungry ox stand in the field and not eat of the sweet grass? Will the owl bite off its own wings? Will the lark forget to lift its body in the air or forget to sing? Will the rivers run upstream? Behold, I say, behold the reliability and the finery and the teachings of this gritty earth gift. Eat bread and understand comfort. Drink water and understand delight. Visit the garden where the scarlet trumpets are opening their bodies for the hummingbirds who are drinking the sweetness, who are thrillingly gluttonous. For one thing leads to another. Soon you will notice how stones shine underfoot. Eventually, tides will be the only calendar you believe in, and someone's face whom you love will be as a star, both intimate and ultimate, and you will be both heart-shaken and respectful. And you will hear the air itself like a beloved whisper, "Oh, let me for a while longer enter the two beautiful bodies of your lungs. The witchery of living is my whole conversation with you, my darlings. All I can tell you is what I know. Look and look again. The world is not just a little thrill for the eyes. It's more than bones. It's more than the delicate wrist with its personal pulse. It's more than the beating of the single heart. It's praising. It's giving until the giving feels like receiving. You have a life. Imagine that. You have this day, and maybe another, and maybe still another. Someday, I'm going to ask my friend Paulus, the dancer, the potter, to make me a begging bowl, which I believe my soul needs. And if I come to you, to the door of your comfortable house, with unwashed clothes and unclean fingernails, will you put something in it? I would like to take this chance. I would like to give you this chance. We do one thing or another. We stay the same or we change. Congratulations if you have changed. Let me ask you this. Do you also think that beauty exists for some fabulous reason? And if you've not been enchanted by this adventure, your life, what would do for you? What I loved in the beginning, I think, was mostly myself. Never mind that I had to, since somebody had to. She had a miserable childhood. That was many years ago. Since then, I've gone out from my confinements, though with difficulty. I mean the ones that thought to rule my heart. I cast them out, put them on the mush pile. They will be nourishment somehow, for everything is nourishment somehow or other. And I have become the child of the clouds and of hope. I have become the friend of the enemy, whoever that is. I have become older, and cherishing what I have learned, I have become younger. And what do I risk to tell you this, which is all I know? Love yourself, then forget it. Then love the world. So let me close with this suggestion. That was the end of the poem. That every morning when we wake, we do a self-check to be certain that we are ready today to witness this shadow of an ungraspable sweetness. And that's what I have to say today. And boy, it gets to me. So anything somebody wants to contribute. Lori Kay.
Okay, that was gorgeous. Just gorgeous. Thank you. Just thank you. I hate to break that mood, so I'll try not to. The way that I look at all scripture now, of any sacred text, is that it is an internal operating system instruction book. And when you read these texts from spiritual, physics, astrological, numerological, physical, through those lenses, you can start to see that none of the stuff that was written is about how you should behave in the world. It's all about how you can awaken within you and how you can treat you and how you can do all that. So eye for an eye. What if we look at that as being the single eye, meaning when we are not trying to make everything divisive within ourselves. We're not arguing with ourselves. And I think it's an injunction, if the injunction is even the right word, of when we stand in that place, then we attract that, we encourage that vibrationally from other people. because the higher vibration wins, ultimately. Also, turn the other cheek. I think that's about us turning the other cheek for ourselves. I don't think that's about somebody else hitting us. I think that's about us going and being mean to ourselves and then going, okay, wait, let me try a different way. Let me try some kindness. And let's see, there was something else I wanted to share with you. Oh, it had to do with the way you were talking about the mind. It has come across my feed that we are always in a really big human evolutionary system, but tens of thousands of years, if not hundreds, but whatever. There was the age of Taurus. I know nothing about it yet. I haven't researched it. Then most recently, the age of Pisces, which is the age of the mind. And so it is the patriarchal structure. Only the intellect, which is the masculine, can operate. I don't know anybody. I personally don't know anybody. I know there are people who think intellect is a bad thing. It's a beautiful thing. It's a good thing. But when it stands alone, it can't. It cannot take over the emotion. It cannot take the intuition. It cannot take the feminine. And Christy just became a cow. What is going on?
I'm having trouble with my video. I'm trying to get it. I'm just trying.
Transformation. It's happening in front of us.
With the collar.
Go up, and this is how it's looking.
Christy.
I love it.
Anyway.
Nonlinear,
for sure. Oh my God, it's perfect.
Thank you.
The age of Taurus, yeah, then the age of Pisces, and now we're in the age of Aquarius. The age of Pisces was about faith, like blind faith. Have faith that this thing is there. The age of Aquarius is experience it as you. And that flies in the face of, I think it's 14,000 or 20,000 years of thou shalt not believe that you're even anywhere in the neighborhood of God. God might be on some other planet and might smile on you someday if you're lucky or good. We are breaking rules, and I love it. And your poem, the poem from Mary Oliver, she's amazing. You're amazing. That's what I have to say.
Thank you. Your conversation reminds me of two things here. We tend to worship the servant and defile the sacred gift. And the other part was first love yourself. And I think it's
that's the hardest part.
Yeah. But until we accomplish that, we can't be the vessel to let the divine fully in. Yay. Somebody else with a contribution? Yes, Ellie?
There we go. Try to figure out some of this technology sometimes just kind of, rattles my brain. So within a couple of weeks, this past couple of weeks, Donovan and I were talking about some of these phrases, the biblical phrases, that a lot of them are Hebrew idioms. And if you're not familiar with, the Hebrew language, you're not going to understand, what those idioms meant. It's like us saying it's raining cats and dogs. Of course, it's not raining cats and dogs. It's an expression. But anyway, I had looked up that one of turning the other cheek this past week. And what it said, and it comes out of Matthew, but what it says, it's an act of nonviolent, creative defiance that asserts dignity rather than passive submission. In first century Judea, offering the left cheek after a backhand strike, an insult, forced the aggressor to treat the victim as an equal rather than a subordinate, thereby breaking the cycle of violence and social hierarchy. which I found that to be very interesting, because in the Western mindset, that's hard for us to comprehend, doing something without some form of violence. But in the Eastern mindset, they don't think violence. They think, another way, usually. So when I looked that up, it just kind of gave me a different perspective on, how to handle things, and especially how when the left cheek was turned, what it meant. It forced the aggressor to treat the victim as an equal instead of subordinate. And of course, in the patriarch mindset, that's not going to fly over well at all, as we all know. So anyway, just a little bit of back history on that. And and then of course one of the things that it said was, the refusal to retaliate. It breaks the tit for tat mentality of revenge, choosing instead to handle with dignity rather than returning evil for evil. Which again, in the Western mindset, we don't think that way. We think, oh, he or she did this, I'm going to do that to get them back. But again, in the Eastern mindset, it's not that way at all. Anyway, that's my 2 cents.
Thank you. Christy, and then we'll come to Sylvie. Christy, I've unmuted you, so go ahead and talk.
Hi, thank you. I really don't know what's going on with my screen. I've been trying to just make myself seen, and this is what we end up with, something that's not really, I guess you can see my mouth move. And that's okay. But it was kind of going back and forth there for a minute. But anyway, I've lost my whole sense of reality. I really think that reality it's what is it? It's not all it's cracked up to be.
Someone has responded, "You are our sacred cow."
So I did have some language for a minute ago, but I realized that when I'm looking at the things that are happening in my life, my world, the fact of all of us kind of finding our edge on the one who flew over the cuckoo's nest, more or less. It's like, what is mental health? When you really get right down to it, which spectrum are we on, and which side are we operating from? It really tends to be more of a kindness, I guess, and understanding self and how we are operating in a social system, to be more tolerant of other people, or respectful, I should say. Anyway, I enjoy your thoughts and bringing them forward. And also this other thing about the divine feminine, that's very special too, because from the operating part, I know what I wanted. One thing I wanted to say, I was working with an artist, and I did a lot of his studio work, which I could call mine, but I won't do that. But he had said something very profound. If you are wanting to live the life of an artist, you cannot be in the studio all the time, because you will not stay grounded. And his part of giving me just that alone, to recognize you've got to have a, how do you want to say, a balanced life, in the way that if you're using the creative, you're using that non-linear, whatever that is that you're doing in that space, has to be balanced with another part of your life. The other part has to come out, or you are non-functioning in your entire world, which there are many artists that do that. But I appreciated him doing that. And we also had a fellow in our class, another mentor of mine, that had a stroke, interestingly enough, and he had been a surgeon. I'll say plastic surgeon. What do you want to say? There's another word for that. But he had to learn to function with the other hand. And he did. He came alive in that class, and he proved to me how you can train the other side of the brain. He never went back to medicine, but he was able to do his artistry from the other hand. and learn that he could come back, because that was important. Yeah, art exists for a wonderful reason in whatever capacity. And thank you. I wish my hands would come up now. Oh, something just stuck out. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Sylvie, I've unmuted you.
Oh, okay. I just wanted to talk about that age of Taurus. The way that it works, it seems to go backwards in the zodiac. So that would have been the age of Taurus. Was wow, that was it. It started out the when humanity started thinking about agriculture, because Taurus is a very it's an earth sign, and it's very much grounded into the earth as far as working with the earth, agriculture, that sort of thing. After that, what happened after that, that was the age of Aries. And as far as Taurus goes, it's ruled by Venus, and it is more like in the time that the divine feminine was, I guess, more prevalent than what happened in the age of Aries, where it was kind of like a rise of, like fighting, that sort of thing, maybe a patriarchy, that sort of thing. After that came the age of Pisces, which was an age of faith, and then the age of Aquarius, which is kind of like the age of technology, which is ruled by Aquarius is ruled by Uranus, and Uranus is all about technology. And that's all I have to say.
Okay,
It was a
thank you.
very good thing you read today. It was very interesting and made me think. It is hard to turn the other cheek, and I was, I'm of the I'd have a hard time turning the other cheek without. But like, I live in a Western world, and I have that Western mind, and that's it. You know what I mean?
I do. Thank you very much. Okay, so thank you, folks, for being with us. Let us do the benediction. We thank you, God, for having gathered us today, for having given us the freedom to share with one another our walks, our joys, our challenges. We thank you for providing this family so that we all know we have someplace we can show up and be accepted just the way we are. So we all know that we can show up and be loved for just who we are. We thank you for watching our backs. We thank you for providing for our needs day to day. We thank you for helping us accumulate abundance of all sorts to joy with and to share with the world. We thank you for watching over us as we prepare to depart from here. We thank you for guiding our feet over the coming time until we return again. And we thank you for helping us to grow in you and through you and to represent you on this earth. We say thank you, thank you, thank you for all this good. And amen.
Amen.